It is the top 10 cards that you need to be picking up for April. And we're going to start off with the number one card that players are on the lookout for, and that is 7th Tachyon. And now 7th Tachyon is the card that is adding insane consistency to the already broken meta decks. And we're going to be seeing in the future with decks like Yummy and K9 that 7th Tachyon will be included in those as well. And even though this card does shut you into Exceeds, a lot of decks like Fiendsmith can utilize links earlier on, and then you use the 7th Tachyon, add that last piece of the combo you need, and then go into your final Exceeds. And now I understand that the prices of this card are pretty high right now, but for the meta players out there, if you want to compete, 7th Tachyon is a card that you need. We know in the future at some point it's going to get the bonfire treatment, but right now it is the card to have. And that is why 7th Tachyon is the number one card that you need for the month of April. But going to our second card, we have Elemental Hero Liquid Soldier. And for the players that have been keeping up with the OCG a little bit, you will know that the manga heroes have been announced for release. That's right, the support for Jaden Yuki that goes all the way back for the OG GX mangas, those monsters are going to be in the TCG. So we see all sorts of hero hype that is being announced, as well as some support in the future and potential reprints. But right now, we see monsters like Elemental Hero Liquid Soldier kind of maintaining a fair price, and if not, going to be seeing an increase in the future. And that is because with just basic hero support, being able to actually summon any level 4 lower hero from your hand, as well as if it's used for any hero material, you are able to then draw 2 cards. And now, while we do assume the newest support will be Elemental Hero based, it's nice that Liquid Soldier can be used for any hero, just in case they use them like Vision Heroes or Masked Heroes. So that is actually something to keep in mind. But Liquid Soldier is definitely a card a lot of players will want to be on the lookout for, because as we know, heroes are a fan favorite. And if this card can be used to any capacity in the future hero deck, we know that the prices of this card will increase and the availability will decrease. So if you're a hero player or a hero fan and are hyped for the new support, definitely consider Liquid Soldier in the month of April. And now the third card on today's list is the newest lock that is going to be introduced to the TCG. And it's actually out right now, but it's going to be enhanced with the K9 support. And that is Artifact Mjolnir. And now, we're actually going to be doing a more in-depth video on this card. But as we know, Artifact Mjolnir is kind of a lock that we've been seeing introduced in the OCG. And with K9 support being able to easily go into rank 5, we see that sometimes players have been Exceed summoning into the Imperial Prince's Quinquerry. And then with the Imperial Princess, we're then actually able to detach and special summon the Artifact Mjolnir directly to the opponent's field. And then once it's summoned, the effect will actually trigger. And then after that, your opponent will not be able to summon anything except artifact monsters until the end of their following turn. So essentially, you will cut them off of summons for the remainder of your turn, and then their entire following turn. And as we know, by that point, the duel will already be over and you'll be the victor. So Artifact Mjolnir is the latest lock card that we're seeing coming to the TCG. And unless Konami addresses this issue soon, this is going to be kind of like a puppet lock combo that we're going to be seeing again and again in the TCG. So Artifact Mjolnir, right now it's a common, so it's easy to pick up, but something that you want to be on the lookout for in the future with K9. But now moving to number 4, and this is kind of an oldie but goodie, and a lot of players probably already have it, but that is Droll and Lock Bird. And now, right now, we see a lot of effect veilers, a lot of imperms, even things like the Ash Blossom, which of course is just always good. But Drone Lockbird is seeing a lot of increase in utility over in the OCG, since a lot of the decks do add multiple times from the deck to the hand. So one Drone Lockbird over something like an Ash Blossom, and you'll actually cut off most of their combo line instead of having to rely on things like a perfectly timed Ash, a perfectly timed Veiler, and Imperm, and then half the time they're going to be utilizing that creature for something else like a Blue Eyes Link 1. So things like the Drone Lockbird are seeing an increase in playability, and they're going to be seeing a nice increase in the metagame here in the TCG very, very soon. So definitely be having your copies of Drone Locks in your side decks ready to go. in the month of April. Number 5 on today's list is another card we have been talking about on the channel, and that is Domain of the True Monarchs. And now, as we see, we have Monarch support reprinted in the Bonanza, as well as Monarch support being announced in the OCG. So Domain of the True Monarchs is hitting the nail on the head of a card that players need to be picking up sooner rather than later. And now, while other cards like the Pantheism will also be important, we see Domain of the True Monarchs will be kind of one of the main cards in a lot of the Monarch decks, as well as other control decks that resemble that of Monarch, like Majesties and Vanities, which we could definitely be seeing in the future. So Domain is definitely a card that if you are a Monarch player or an anti-meta player that just wants to grief and lock the opponent out of their extra deck, Domain is a card you want to be picking up sooner rather than later. And now we have a bunch of commons with the Haunted Mine, but for the OTS Super, we see they're becoming harder and harder to obtain. So Domain of the True Monarchs is a card that you want to be picking up sooner rather than later, especially if you want that super rare of that card. Because once these Monarch cards hit, they're going to hit the meta hard, and I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to be seeing more of the actual boss monster Monarchs released as time goes on, as well as potentially other tribute summon monsters in the future that also can be utilized with the Domain field spell. And as we mentioned in a video a long time ago, some of the Primites can be utilized with the Domain as well, where you get all the Primite support like the Drill Beam and the Primite Ether Barrel, but we also can use Domain and lock the opponent out of their entire extra deck. And that pushes us up to our 6th card, and that is Mask of Restrict. So if you don't want to be hit with the Monarch cards and you want to utilize your extra deck, potentially be looking into Mask of Restrict. And honestly, right now, this isn't a market watch, but all the copies of this card are exceedingly expensive. So if you have your copies, definitely be happy, maybe hold on to them, but if you want to pick them up sooner rather than later, might be better, unless this card somehow receives a reprint in something in the future. So again, Mask Restrict might not be this format, but in the very near future, something that you will want in your side deck. And now moving off the continuous trap, we have to go to the king of traps, and that is Eldritch the Golden Lord. Now again, this is an easier to obtain card anymore, but Eldritch is seeing its support coming to the TCG really soon, and once it hits, we're going to be seeing players are going to be incorporating this into their builds, especially since Eldritch is extremely easy to get to, especially with the Delta of Invitation field spell. So a lot of times we see players don't even need to use the trap support. Once they have Eldritch in the grave, it is a constant boss monster coming back with 35 and protection. And that is something not a lot of decks can actually deal with. So Eldritch the Golden Lord, definitely a card that you want to be picking up, especially in a higher rarity, well before they have their support in the TCG. And before we get to the rest of the top 10, if you're liking any of the cards mentioned, or if you want to be picking up cards well before they spike in price, definitely consider becoming a subscriber to the channel, because we mention cards well before they're useful in the metagame, so you can acquire them easier and much cheaper. But let's get right back to the video. And speaking of cards we've talked about on this channel, the next one is one I've gotten the most hate for, and that is Max C. And now, with the most recent printing of it in the up-and-coming Stampede, we see that players are kind of like, are they actually going to do it? And honestly, I kind of hope they do, because Max C would be a beautiful card in the metagame. Don't hate me in the comments, or do. But Max C could be something that the Konami is flirting with just to make sure they sell that extra product. And then maybe ban it again. I don't know. Konami's kind of crazy. We'll see what they do. But we saw Molcharmies got released. Haven't actually been as nutty in the metagame outside the Fool loss. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Konami goes a little crazy with the Max C to sell that product. So Max C, definitely a card you want to be keeping a couple copies of just in case. But moving on to the next card on the list, and that is Red Reboot. And now we have just mentioned in multiple videos how Konami is actually rotating us into a future trap meta, whether that's with the newest hand traps with the Dominuses, the new Odeon support, Eldritch support in the future, or other cards that they might be announcing in the future meta game. We see that it is extremely hard to deal with some of these cards on turn 1, especially since a lot of the new support has been catered against monster effects like the triple tactics talent or thrust. So Konami has actually basically banned the only capable card of dealing with traps on the first turn, especially if you are going first and you're getting hit out by cards like the impermanence or the dominances. And we actually mentioned in a recent video how Red Reboot could be a card that gets unbanned in, rather this list or a future list. Definitely is something that Konami could be lining up to do. And we see even in the OCG, this card is at 1 and is putting in work. So unless Konami randomly hits the one out of OCG, they might see that this is potentially a balanced card and unban it in the TCG. And now I went a little bit more in depth in that video, but I want to note this card is not as broken as it was in previous formats, especially since a lot of players will be using it on their very first turn. So that is cutting their life points in half, not getting rid of their trap, but setting it, and then they get to set another one from the deck. So on their following turn, while they go second, they're going to be starting with quite the cards. So Red Reboots might be balanced and could definitely come to 1. So it is a card we are mentioning on the top 10 cards that you need for April. And now we see number 10 on the list is Power Filter. And now we see Yummy right around the corner in the meta game, and once it hits the TCG, we're going to be seeing that deck everywhere. So players might want to equip themselves with the playset of Power Filters in their side deck, because once you activate this card, your opponent will not be able to summon anything with 1,000 or less attack. And as we know, all the Yummies are pretty weak. So Power Filter is going to be one of the floodgates we see returning to the metagame in the future. So definitely be picking up your copies sooner rather than later in the month of April. But if you want to know other cards to be picking up potentially on the cheaper end, definitely check out our market watches flashing above, where we mention other cards you might want to be picking up before they see more support, like Infernity. So definitely check out those market watches. And as always, guys, stay safe, have a good night, and suck it, nerds.